Welcome back. I'm Summer Poletti, Fractional Chief Revenue Officer at Rise of Us and your host of Revenue Remix. Today, I am joined by Aprelle Duany, an ambitious problem solver who wants to create impact for women. Yes, please.
Yay.
She is a lifelong learner currently working on her PhD, and she's currently sitting in the library, of course, in Boca Raton, Florida. Aprelle brings great insights to today's conversation. Welcome.
Welcome back to Revenue Remix, a podcast from Rise of Us, where we take a fresh spin on driving revenue growth, hosted by Summer Poletti, a fractional CRO who works with business owners and leaders who feel held back by outdated systems. This podcast explores how adaptable, unified frameworks can transform static processes, equipping teams to meet evolving customer needs and drive resilient, lasting growth. Each episode features insights from Summer and her guests, offering practical strategies to sidestep common pitfalls and build real revenue momentum. It's time to remix the way we think about growth. Enjoy the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So excited.
Can you tell us an early job or a youth activity that might surprise the audience?
So, my first summer job, and this is how I knew I was always going to be an entrepreneur because I didn't like people telling me what to do. But my first summer job, I worked at a Mexican restaurant called Chi-Chi's. Have you ever heard of Chi-Chi's? It's like in the Virginia, Maryland area. And so I was a waitress for about 2 weeks. And they had this thing called the sizzling fajita. I don't know if you ever had a sizzling fajita, but it's like literally hot meat, like oil, everything is like on fire. And I walked out and I'm like, have all the trays balancing. And I literally dropped it on the back of someone's back. And I just died. I could not even look him in the eye. And I was just like, oh my God. This is a sign that I'm just not meant to be here. Luckily, he was like with some like women. I think he was trying to like, be like very like macho. And so he was like acting as if his back wasn't on fire. But when I tell you that was my last day as a waitress, I couldn't believe it. Yeah, it was actually horrible. It was horrible. And I was like, oh my God, this is... I need to be on a computer. And I still see that vision when I see fajitas. I'm like, I'll never order that again. Like, it's just too traumatizing.
I guess so. They smell lovely. That guy went home smelling delicious.
Exactly. And it's like sizzling. You feel like excited. Everyone's like watching it. I'm like, oh, it's dangerous. Yeah, it is a dangerous choice.
Okay, so then you go from being a traumatized waitress...
Right.
To where you are now. You've just done so many things.
Yeah.
Give us a wiki version.
Even if I go back to that moment, I've always been about, like, financial empowerment has always been something very important to me. And so growing up, I grew up in a family where we didn't have a lot of like finances, but we didn't know that. We just thought, hey, this is normal. Maybe you don't have everything all of your friends have. But later on in life, I started to really see the financial struggle. And for me, it was always important for me to be able to contribute and for me to be able to have my own funds and just really be able to empower myself. And so that was kind of the first kind of in my childhood, seeing the disconnect between people being very skilled and very talented and not being able to leverage that into financial success. And so both of my parents were entrepreneurs, and my mom bakes all the time. People would follow her around like, hey, do you have cake in your purse? I'm like, why would she have cake in her purse? Like, what kind of question is this? But it just goes to show how much her products were so well loved. I'm like, people are chasing you down, but yet we're still having these financial, tugs of war. And so for me, it was always like, okay, what is this gap? What is this bridge? And as I mentioned before, I'm just insatiable when I have a problem that I don't see a solution for. I have to go all in, like roll my sleeves up and like figure it out. I was a kid who would like take the toaster apart and take the DVD apart because I just wanted to know how it worked. If I didn't know how something worked, I didn't know how the system behind it, it would just plague me all the time. And so easily that led me into engineering, which is what I studied in college. Interesting that my freshman year, I was at a big school. I was the only Black woman in my freshman class. And I was like, oh, okay, this is very interesting. What is this about? And so that was kind of my introduction to STEM, that it can be a lonely journey. And so that is another thing that propels me in the space of AI because, I won't say the number, but quite a few decades later, women are still behind in terms of STEM, in terms of engaging and being a part of, the tech opportunities. And so now that I'm involved in AI, it's just a no-brainer that that's the space that I'm in. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of my journey from burning people with fajitas to building solutions with.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot there. Women are underrepresented in tech, Black women even more so. And then that translates to AI. And unfortunately, I see the stats and women aren't catching up with AI.
Yeah.
In general, women are falling further behind.
Yeah.
Which is a little
cringy. And let me tell you for 2 reasons why it gives me, 3 reasons actually. Number one, I have 2 daughters. And so my mission in life is to help prepare them for life. And so I have to prepare them for an AI future. They have to be well versed in all of these tools so that they're not behind. I don't want them to have the same experience that I had. And so that's one challenge. Second challenge is that even in the space of AI, it also mirrors venture capital. And so women in general are behind when it comes to investment in businesses. And that also deters our opportunities to drive wealth. And so we see a lack of representation in AI, but that mirrors other areas where we're not being represented. Now, that leads me to my main issue, which is where we also have to take accountability. AI is now the most accessible piece of technology we have ever seen in our lifetime. Before, you had to know how to code, you had to have some kind of engineering background, you had to have some kind of technical background in order to leverage technology, or you had to have a budget to find someone who could do that for you. Now with AI, with all of the different tools that we have, there's no reason for us not to get involved. But again, we're challenged because society tells us we need to work harder. We need to be burnt out to show that we're actually doing the work that women are supposed to do. And so we now have to take on that role of saying, we don't have to work harder. We need to start working smarter. And I feel AI was built for us. Even though we're not as represented, I feel that it was built for us. And it's that tool that can help us leapfrog over hundreds of years of societal norms that we can now create our own new norms. And that's my little soapbox, babe.
I agree. This feels like we're building a new thing, so it's time for women to come to the table and build our spot and bridge the gap.
Yeah.
But the challenge, and I'm non-technical, so I come to AI work as an operator who's worked in the tech space, but not as a coder, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember thinking this AI thing, I'm non-technical, so this isn't for me. But it's so easy to use. But then the challenge is women are underrepresented in tech. So I think there's a lot of women that have that journey like I have, AI, I guess that's not for me.
Right. Yeah. And I think it unfortunately was maybe not intentional, but I think that when you think of the terms that are floating around in terms of the AI space, you think of prompt engineering, machine learning. These are all very technical terms. You don't have to understand machine learning to use Amazon. That's AI. You don't have to know how to prompt engineer to use Siri. That's also AI. And so I think the terminology also has to shift so that it's more welcoming for more people. And that's one of the barriers that I do see a lot of non-technical people. They're like, oh, it has engineering in it. I'm not an engineer. It's don't let the terms intimidate you because you don't have to be an engineer to really utilize the innovation.
Yes, I love it. Now that's a good segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about. You emphasize, so AI is not just for women, it's for everybody. I also see it as something that can help bridge the gap for small businesses. I work with growth stage businesses. Yeah. And so you emphasize leveraging AI to enhance productivity for small businesses. Can you share a story that would illustrate?
Yes, I think AI is such an amazing tool for small businesses, especially those that are in the kind of the growth. They're not ready to scale, but they're kind of in that growth stage. It can be your co-founder. It can be your 7-figure success coach. I mean, really, you just have to look at where am I struggling the most, and then you can plug in AI. So just as an example, one of my first clients, the story is just hilarious to me. She came to me and she's like, hey, I've been seeing all your stuff on LinkedIn, how can this AI work for me? How can AI work for me? Which is always a funny question to me because it's such a general thing when AI can do everything. It's okay, where do we start? But basically for her, everything in her business was manual. From her onboarding, she had Post-it notes everywhere. She would have notes everywhere. And so there was such a gap from when someone showed interest in working with her, and she kind of was playing between the space of being an accountant and a CFO. She had no problems with generating leads, but now getting that lead to a paid client was delaying her. And so we literally just automated her onboarding process. Like I would say that's probably a fraction of how she could have used AI. Just literally onboard AIing her onboarding process saved her like 10 or 20 hours a week. And just the peace of mind that it gave her, that when she got off of a call with a potential client, number one, when she's on the call, she can be fully present because we were using AI tools that can now document the conversation. It can now automate the forms and do the questions and all of those different things. She was able to show up presently and really engage with that potential client. And then the work that she didn't enjoy doing was automated. And so getting her to be able to invoice sooner also just helped her bottom line. So even the simplest thing can allow you to see such extraordinary results.
I like that. And then if you're saving her that much time, it's not from the 40-hour work week, it's from the 80-hour work week, which gives her more time to spend with
her family, resting,
loved ones, or
just sleeping,
cats, I don't know, whatever,
taking a nap, just living life outside of work.
I love that. So I like what you focused on, because I feel like, how can AI help my business is like, I'm hungry, I like food, what should I eat?
Right. What do you want? Exactly.
To find one thing, because that's, some of it is like the overwhelm. I want to grow my business. What should I concentrate on? And it's like, well, growth stage businesses, y'all got to do a lot of stuff.
A lot at the same time.
Find one or two.
Right. Yeah.
Because otherwise it's overwhelmed. So yeah, that's really
cool. I also find that a lot of times people are trying to do what other people are doing. Your business model could be completely different than your neighboring friend who is also in growth stage. So it's not even just finding one thing. What is your one thing? Like, what is your business model? What are your revenue goals? Someone who's trying to generate $10,000 a month versus someone who's trying to generate $1 million a month, their one thing is going to be different. And so you can use this huge tool called AI, but it can be very nuanced to what your particular needs are at that specific point. Yeah.
So that leads us to your framework. Is designed to help businesses work smarter. Can you break down your framework? Give us the wiki version or the AI search version.
So the framework actually started, I was doing some one-on-one consulting. And at the time I was transitioning, I was a stay-at-home mom and I was getting back into the workforce. And so at the time I was just doing some one-on-one coaching. I was also polishing my resume, figuring out all the things. And I remember all of the recruiters that I was speaking to and all the informational interviews that I was having, it just shocked me that women in the corporate space were still facing the same challenges that I remember hearing about 20 years ago when I was in corporate America. This whole thing of working harder, you got to work twice as much to get half as much. At that time, 20 years ago for me, I didn't have children, I didn't have a husband, and I still struggled to do all the things. And I was like, wow, are we still there? Are we still working harder?
Yes.
And all of the data shows that we've been working hard for so long, but there's no data that shows that it's working. And I'm like, if working hard doesn't work, we have to change the narrative. And so this idea just kept coming to me. How can we work smarter? Working hard doesn't work. How do we work smarter? And so that's kind of the idea of the framework. It's a recipe. If you go into when I'm invited for Thanksgiving, I literally have 2 meals that I can make. One is baked macaroni and cheese. The other one is cornbread. Those are my go-tos. There's nothing else included. I don't get invited for anything else. But I know that recipe inside and out. And so I wanted it to feel familiar. I wanted it to decrease the overwhelm. And so basically SMART stands for, number one, the S is it's an acronym. So the S is strategic clarity. What are the things that you do well? And are you implementing them in your business? I think the hardest work you can do is trying to be excellent at something you're terrible at. And a lot of business owners are really trying hard at the wrong things. And it's what are you uniquely gifted at? What are the things that keep you up at night, that are that you want to change in the world. So it's really starting from a positioning of strength. Secondly, the next stage is for magnetic message. When you have a question like, what should I post? Who am I talking to? Why am I not getting any impressions? This really goes back to not having that really clear marketing message. And that message should attract people to you. That should be the hard work. Your message should be the hard work. So for me, my message is working smarter, not harder. So for someone who's in the hustle culture, like, hey, stay up all night, they're going to think I'm crazy, and that's fine. I want my message to do the work to tell people if they're in my tribe or not, right? But people are not using their message in order to attract and repel. So that's the second stage. Third stage is automated workflow. Again, as I mentioned with my initial client, like we have to stop doing things manually. If you're having to do something 2 or 3 times, that's a process that you can now automate. And so from someone getting to know you to being in your inbox, that whole entire process can be automated. And if it's not automated, you're either leaving money on the table or you're working too hard, right? So it's like you have to get out of the thing of continuously doing repetitive tasks. Now, the next stage is R. That stands for revenue roadmap or your revenue ladder. So when someone starts to work with you, they may not have $1,000 to invest, right? You need to have a ladder, just like when you go into a high-end luxury store. You're not buying a Birkin right away. Maybe you're getting a keychain, or maybe you're getting a perfume, and then you're building your way up the ladder, right? So when we have these high-ticket offers and we don't have a relationship, and we're like, oh, well, my product doesn't work. No, it's just you haven't built that relationship. And so that's what that revenue roadmap is about. And then lastly, for the T, it really comes down to your tools and your team. I think too many of us, I work a lot with women entrepreneurs, and we're working in isolation. And so you feel like you're the only one that's having struggles, but it's like all of LinkedIn has low engagement, right? It's not just about you, but you need to be with other people to understand what's happening in the market and then being able to brainstorm with different people. So depending on what you're struggling with will help you determine which part of this framework should I be focused on. So if you're not attracting the right client, you need to go to your marketing message. If you're unclear on what your offer is, you need to start with strategic clarity. So I kind of built it in a way that could be a smart model, a smart framework. So you don't have to think of all the things. You're basically focused on like 5 different sectors to grow the business.
These are great points. The one that stood out to me most is the attract and repel, which I think can seem a little scary, the repel part, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, you can't be all things to all people, so you can't have a generic message. And really, you need to attract the right people, your people.
Exactly.
And anybody else needs to be like, okay, that's not for me. And that's okay, because you don't need that person.
Right.
With that repel thing, do you find that sometimes people are like, ooh?
I feel that people, especially
hesitant,
for women, it's like we have to please everyone. It's just not possible. It's absolutely not possible. When I think of like getting coffee, I'm a Starbucks person. Dunkin' Donuts doesn't mind that I'm a Starbucks person because they have their people, right? I enjoy Target. Walmart doesn't mind because they have their people. And so when we think about how large corporations work, they're not trying to please everyone. And so especially when you're in a growth stage, the more narrow your market is, the easier your life is. And so if you feel like you're fighting a lot of noise and you're fighting a lot of chaos, it's probably because your message is so wide. And then you start regretting your business and you start being annoyed by your customers. And like, you invited them to the table. You invited them to the barbecue. Everyone doesn't have to come to the barbecue, just your people. And so there's enough people who need services and are looking for solutions that we don't need to service everyone. I think it also comes out of a mindset of scarcity, where it's like, if I don't speak to everyone, I'm not going to hit my revenue goals, or I'm not going to, be able to grow my business. And it's actually the reverse. Too many people are going to slow you down. Imagine trying to put 10 people on your shoulders. No, you just need like one qualified person that you can help transform. And that is really going to be the foundation of something successful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes back to like, a lot of times I've worked with early stage companies and they're like, well, we're in our beggars can't be choosers era. It's tough because you're doing work that isn't within your zone of genius.
Right. Yeah.
Which isn't your best quality work, which isn't going to build your best reputation. It's also exhausting to you. Like, it just feels like a recipe for burnout, since we're talking about food.
Completely.
By the way, I'm hungry now. Thank you.
My stomach just started growling as well. Literally, I just had a growl.
Mac and cheese. Not cool.
But what I also
Okay,
I advise people to gamify when they're in that stage, gamify it. Because what people also do, they'll come up with a product and they're so desperate and they fall in love with that product versus falling in love with a product that will help you build a profitable and sustainable business, right? And so if you're in that beggars can't be choosers phase, gamify it. Put out something every week and look at the data. The data is not going to lie. The numbers are not going to lie. The market is going to tell you what's working and what's not working. And when you have something that is working, then you can tweak it to your zone of genius. But too many people spend too much time on something that's not tested in the market. And then you fall in love with it. And then it's like, oh, my thing. It's like, no, don't fall in love with it. Put things out there, find out what the market wants, and then you can tweak it if you're in that stage. And AI can be a great tool to do that as well. You can create a custom GPT. Take screenshots of your data and say, hey, this is my data week by week. What's the direction that I should go in? Like, that's easy. Just don't fall in love with your products before they're loving you back.
Yeah, well, and, oh my gosh, there's so much there to talk about. So it's like building a thing that you think is cool, and then you put it out there, and you're like, but who is it for? And more importantly, what is it supposed to do to make their life better?
Yeah.
Because, I do see a lot of founders falling in love with their product or service or their great $1 million idea. And it's like, but what does it do that is impactful to someone else?
Right. That's a great point that you bring up, because a lot of times we're just very me-driven in business. And it's like, no one cares about you. They're looking for a solution for their problem. No one cares what your idea is unless it is a solution for their problem. And I've been there, because you have like this idea and you're like, oh, this is amazing. It's something no one's ever thought of. You put so much time and energy and effort, and then it's like crickets. And like, what's wrong with you guys? And actually, no, it's what's wrong with me. I started something for me. So I either have an expensive hobby, or I'm going to find out what the market actually wants, and I'm going to create a solution so that I can be in business. So that's a great point that you
I was just going to say, that's a hobby. And then before we go to break, I want to touch on a little nugget of genius there, like that AI can help you. Because I think sometimes, especially early stage founders, you have this certain idea, and it's really difficult to be unbiased, especially if you haven't built a large team around you, you don't have a lot of proof of concept. That AI can tell you, like, that no.
Right.
And it can help you refine in a way that sometimes a human can't, because the human is there to make you feel good about yourself.
Exactly. You can do it. Yes.
Tell you, no. This is a bad thing. It's not working. Move on.
Right. This is going to bankrupt you, and you don't want that. But actually, I also find you have to be intentional about the prompting as well, because AI is a little narcissistic. Like, it wants to please you. It's going to tell you what you want to hear, so when I'm doing anything strategic, I have a custom GPT tool, and it coaches me like I coach other people. And so that's one of my hidden talents. I sense the kind of like, oh, you're saying this, but really this is what's going on. And so sometimes we need that harsh coaching. And so I created a GPT that is as harsh on me as I am on other people. And so when I'm prompting, I'm like, hey, these are my metrics from last week. And what do you think about what we should do next? It's like, the hard truth is, you fall in love with your idea. And instead of spending time, I'm like, oh, okay. So if you design your tool to give you that really critical feedback, it can do that. And now with specifically OpenAI, that's one of the things I use quite often. It has a deep research feature where you can say, hey, these are the things that I'm great at, and I would love to create a business that generates X amount every single month. Please go in and find how I should approach this in terms of the market who has a need for a solution that I can provide. And it'll give you market trends. It'll give you your competitors in that market. It'll give you solution ideas. So it's really going in and asking the right questions in order to generate the feedback that you want. But doing it by yourself, I'm telling you, it's like doing your accounting with like a pen and paper, like no one's doing that anymore. So trying to start your business in your head, it's just not a worthwhile exercise.
That is a brilliant workflow. My business was already established before the deep research, so I used the deep research for client research, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, you could use that. So AI was my founder, or my co-founder also.
Perfect.
But I hadn't thought of it in that way because it's just so new. That is super cool. Okay,
Yeah.
That is going in the highlight reel, by the way. Okay, so we need to pause for a brief message from my sponsor. Stick around because after the break, Aprelle is going to talk about her global experiences, and we've been talking so much about AI, we really need to talk about where this future is going.
Summer Poletti of Rise of Us helps her clients transform by building adaptable, customer-focused sales systems that replace outdated models. With these new frameworks, their teams can respond quickly to evolving customer needs, reduce friction, and work as one cohesive unit. This shift equips them with the tools to drive consistent growth, lowering churn, and creating lasting customer relationships. As a result, they achieve sustainable revenue growth that positions them ahead of competitors and prepared for future challenges. Together, you and Summer will create a foundation that not only meets today's demands, but supports long-term success.
Having lived and worked in various countries, how have your international experiences influenced your business perspectives?
I think it's just helped me to really be more empathetic and understand problem solving from different dynamics and different dimensions. So I lived in Africa for about 15 years. So that's East Africa. I've lived in Europe. I've visited Asia, been in Dubai, that kind of area. But I feel like as a human race, we're all similarly trying to navigate, building a business, trying to support your family, trying to do all of the things. But then you have cultural nuances that shift the way that people do those things. And so for me, it's just giving me a broader scope on how I can approach different problems and putting myself in the position of that person, which just helps me to create better solutions. And I think in terms of AI, it is a global tool, right? It's not just something that's focused in the US. We can leverage these tools globally. And I think that is also just allowing our humanity to prosper equally. Where in certain areas, like developing countries, they could be a bit behind because they don't have the infrastructure or they don't have the assets or the collateral where AI can come in as the equalizer. So it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what your background is. It can allow you to take something from an idea to execution very quickly. So that's kind of what I've seen on a global perspective.
It's about dang time.
I know, it is.
So everybody has to talk about the future of AI. It's on everybody's bingo card this year, okay?
Yes.
So let's think about 3 years. Focus it on small business. Where is it going? How should entrepreneurs be preparing for these changes? I feel like we're at a pivotal point right now.
I have a counter perspective on the future of AI. My number one advice is that everyone should be using artificial intelligence in some way, shape, or form. I don't believe that you have to stay up to date, like all the new updates and the agents and all of this. I don't think that's necessary. I think it's too overwhelming for most people, and I don't think it's necessary. And when you get into that space, it's almost counterproductive to say, hey, I have to now learn how to create an AI agent when it's also meant to be accessible for the regular person, right? And so I believe everyone should be using it in ways that bridges gaps that you yourself are experiencing, whether that's in work, whether that's in life, if that's helping you create a menu, meal planning, whatever that is. What can it help you with solving problems that you are facing? Right. So I think it needs to be a more, how can I use it in my day-to-day life versus how can I stay up to date on all of the things that AI can do, which is another excuse to just keep chasing shiny objects. Right. I do think with the speed of AI, I do feel there's going to be a backlash because it's almost insurmountable to have the idea that I can raise a family, I can run my business, and now I have to become an AI expert just to stay on a level playing field. So I think there's going to be a backlash to the speed in which these tools are being innovated. I think we haven't seen a lot of regulation around how to use AI properly and ethically and responsibly. And so as things are moved quickly, and to be honest, it's in the hands of people who are used to moving fast and breaking things. But I do feel there's going to be a level of responsibility where the common person is like, oh, is it okay to just break things because you can? Maybe not. Maybe we should take a step back and say these are the use cases that are harming people, and who is accountable for that. It's not just about what can I create quickly. It's what is the end use of this and who's going to be responsible for it. So when we start having those conversations about responsibility and ethics just around the dinner table, not at the high level of like the CEO of Microsoft and all of the new tech at the dinner table, when we start talking about AI being responsible and ethical, I think we're going to see a backlash. I think things are going to slow down, and I think people are going to start to remember we do need to have humans in this space, because some things we can't design around. We can't design intuition. I don't believe we can. So I think there's going to be a backlash. I think things are going to slow down, and for that small business owner who's like a subject matter expert at what they do, they're going to be best positioned, because now they're going to be able to utilize their expertise and add AI on top of it, sprinkle it like the sprinkles when you make the sundae, and it's just going to make it better. You don't necessarily have to become like a coder and like all these things to stay up to date, because then it gets people out of being able to really utilize it and leverage it before they're actually comfortable with it. So that's my prediction. It's counterintuitive. Probably some people will be like, no, but that's what I believe. The human nature is going to kick in, and people are going to be like, we've seen this happen before when things get out of hand very quickly. And so we want to avoid that.
Yes. No, okay, so yes to so much of that. First of all, it's funny because this is in my head because this was my Substack newsletter yesterday, was like the experts, they don't know. First of all, the AI hype, like the agents and all that, they don't do everything that you think they do.
No, they don't.
And the experts, some of them will admit that.
Mm-hmm.
And the experts are like, even we don't know really where this is going. It's funny because both you and I are, maybe you're definitely more of an expert than I am, but we're like, I'm positive about AI, but we're like outside of Silicon Valley.
Yes.
And so it's funny. I told somebody recently, I was like, okay, I'm an outsider, but like, didn't we learn from social media that move fast, break things was a bad idea?
Exactly. Why do we have to keep relearning the same lessons? Like, we don't have to do that.
Yeah. So I like what you said about the backlash, because like the way I put it is like the next couple of years are going to be messy.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
People are going to be like, oh, I can let go half my marketing team and I can use AI agents, but the tech's not there yet. And so I think we're going to be like, wait, I need some people to come in here and clean up this mess.
Exactly.
And maybe that's the backlash you're talking about.
Exactly.
Chaos right now.
And on top of that, you have people, because it's not difficult to learn AI. I'll put it that way. If you have like a marketing background or some kind of engineering background, you also can identify that this is a trend. Hey, you can start an AI agency tomorrow, right? Does it mean that you're positioned to help someone grow their business from a marketing perspective? Maybe not. And so for that business owners who's like, oh, let me just, fire half of my marketing team and I'll just give it to an AI agency. These are 20-year-old kids who don't know anything, and it's like not to be negative, but it's like you have to understand it enough to know what you're passing off. And you need to be able to vet the person who maybe has this agency or who's giving you this tool. Do they have the knowledge to build the tool? Because it's a knowledge-based tool, right? Just because an AI agent can do everything, it could also harm you. So that's and I'm a low risk person. I'll also put that out there. I'm not the person that's, just jumping off the cliff because there's a line to do it. So, that's a little, I'm a more reserved character.
Yeah, that's fine. It's all good. You had that traumatic experience with the fajitas. No more. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So we're getting into okay, AI can't write your blog for you. It can write sales follow-up emails. But what I want people to think about is, okay, the person that coded that AI, what's their background? What do they
Exactly.
actually know about sales? What do they actually know about marketing? Because
Exactly.
that's what I've studied. And when I look at the output, I'm like,
It's off.
okay, you check
Right.
off the box that you wrote a
Exactly.
blog, but
Right.
the messaging
Exactly. Matters. It matters. And we're going to be now there's so much noise in the market because we can do everything with AI. At some point, like imagine there was a time where you were seeing ads on TV and it was like, "Oh, wow, you're engaged," right? But after a few years, it's just normal. It's like noise when you see an ad. You get up, you go make coffee or something like that. That's how the AI blogs and ads and marketing, it's just going to sound like noise because it's like, okay, I've seen that same exact prompt message over and over and over again. So you still need the human in the message so that it resonates. And so a lot of people are like, oh, let me just jump to automation. Let me just jump to this AI agent. It doesn't know you and it doesn't know your audience. It's not going to know this top performing post was actually about how your daughter missed the school bus, right? It's not going to create that. So it can help you polish, but just removing yourself from the process, it's going to do more harm in my perspective, especially for small business owners. Leverage it. Don't replace anything that's instrumental in your business at this point.
Yeah. Yes. Oof. That is another little nugget of wisdom. We've talked a lot about work. Enough about work. And you're not only balancing work with being a mom, but also ongoing education. Like I do 2 of those things, and it's not easy. How do you manage all those roles and still make time for you, the person?
Yes. It actually is a skill. It's a skill that I actually have had to learn over time. I have eliminated the word balance from my life. There's no balance. There was a time when we moved from Kenya to Florida, I gained like 40 pounds immediately. And I was like working out, I was eating well, but the food is different. And so I was trying to balance getting back in shape with like exercise and eating, but I was still eating bad. And so that's when the idea came to me. There is actually no balance. I can't have a Krispy Kreme diet and work out, right? Those two things don't.
Yeah, my
don't
doctor
match.
tells me that.
Like
how rude.
So it's like, excuse me, I don't believe in balance. I believe a well-lived life is by design. And so for me, my top priorities are very clear. My number one job is to prepare my kids for life. So that takes precedent over every single thing. That's the way that I designed my day. So I'm with them in the morning before they go to school, and around 3:30, my day is over. And so because I'm very intentional about my time, it also dictates I basically run my business while they're at school. So that determines what are the opportunities that I'm going to involve myself in. I'm not going to build a business selling, $10,001 ebooks, right? I have to be very intentional about the way that I structure the business because of my priorities. And so I just design it. I'm very clear on what's important and I design my life around it. And that means sometimes I have to say no to people, which I'm okay with. I can't do all the things, which I'm also okay with. And I know that I can do it all in season, right? So for me, doing it all is being present for my kids. We like have dinner together. When they come home, they're like so dramatic, like, "Oh, Mom, the day was so hard." I'm like, "You're only in school for like 4 hours. How hard could it have been?" But those moments when they're like, this teacher was so hard, those are the moments that build the memories. And so I'd literally just design my life the way that I feel my priorities get to shine the most. And I'm just unapologetic about it. So balance, I don't believe in balance at all. And sometimes as a parent, the idea of balance, it keeps us focused on the wrong things because we're thinking we have to do all the things. You don't have to do all the things. Pick the things that are the priority and design those elements into your life. Yeah. So I don't do all the things. I say that. Yeah. I don't do all the things. I do some of the things, some of the time.
Of course. It's so hard, like being a mom and having a career. Society can tell you that, you're being a bad mom right now because you're working. And society can tell you you're being a bad career woman because you're spending time with your kids.
Yeah.
I like the way that you put that. Why don't you get a time machine and tell 25-year-old me,
Exactly.
design it around the thing that's most important? Because I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
But considering it a balancing act, I like that. I might steal that.
Yeah.
Because there's no such thing
do.
as work-life balance. It's just not a
There's
thing,
no
right?
work-life balance. And also, I feel like, so I did step away from my career. I'm not a person that lives for regrets, but I did step away from like pursuing my career because I thought I had to now go into mom mode. And that is my biggest regret. My only regret in life is that I had that mindset that I couldn't be both a great mom and have a wonderful career. And as my daughters started getting older and I'm telling them like, oh, what do you like to do? Like I was a hypocrite because I'm telling them, hey, what do you enjoy doing? What do you like doing? How can I support you in that? And yet I know for a fact, I've always wanted to have a career. I've always been a professional. I was never that woman like, oh, I can't wait to get married and have kids and just, that was never my story. And for some people, that's their story and that's fine. But what I also realize is if you can't show up fully for who you are, you're not doing anyone a service. You're actually doing a disservice because your children are going to do not what you tell them, what they see you doing. And so now that my kids see I'm building a business, they're sometimes on calls with me. I'm like, shh, but they see it's an integration. Life is integrated. And so when I did step back and I wasn't being my fullest and most authentic self, it didn't work anyway. So you've got to figure out how to find out what's important to you and then design your life around those things. So I do think society does us a disservice, but we can now say, okay, we're not taking that advice anymore. There's a lot of other pieces of advice we've shifted to the side. We can shift that one as well. Bye-bye.
It doesn't serve us. Adios. Boy, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. However, the time is up. We both have businesses to run. So why don't you let us know where can the audience find you and learn more about your SMART framework?
Yes. So 2 places. Number 1, LinkedIn is my go-to. It's my happy place for social media. So Aprelle Duany, that's where you'll find me on LinkedIn. And then you can also go to my website, which is AI Equity Ventures, and you can find out about my different programs and free resources there as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate you joining me on Revenue Remix. Remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube channel for more insights and interviews. And as I always tell my clients, when your team's strategies and goals align, growth isn't just possible, it's inevitable. I appreciate the listen, and I will see you next week.